on to the Agency Systems and Community Health Improvement webinar on the PDCA cycle for change leaders and handling change resistors with Jack Moran, Sonia Armbruster, and Les Beich. This is Liliana Johnson with NPHI as your moderator. So as change is announced in an organization, there's often resistance among some of those who feel may be impacted. This hour, we'll discuss some of the behaviors that change leaders needed to bring about change related to QI and to identify change resistor behaviors and tips to address those challenges. So before I turn it over, I want to provide some information about who we have on the line to talk about this. Jack Moran, or John Moran, is a Senior Quality Advisor to the Public Health Foundation and a Senior Fellow at the University of Minnesota School of Public Health in the Division of Health Policy and Management. Jack brings over 30 years of quality improvement expertise in developing quality improvement tools and training programs, implementing, evaluating QI programs, and writing articles and books on quality improvement methods. And second, we have Sonia Armbruster with the Sedgwick County Health Department in Kansas, where she served in a number of administrative roles, including program and policy development, health promotion, program management, and community assessment. Her current duties include development and monitoring of strategic plan and performance management systems, revision of QA, and accreditation preparation efforts, as well as leadership of the community health improvement process, which they're using MAP, or Mobilizing Action for Planning and Partnerships. And last, we can hear from Les Beich as well, who is faculty at Florida State University College of Medicine as Professor of Health Policy and the Director of the Center of Medicine and Public Health. He's currently the Associate Dean for Health Affairs. And before joining College of Medicine, he was Commissioner of the Oklahoma State Department of Health and served as Deputy Secretary and Assistant State Health Officer for the Florida Department of Health. I'm hearing a little bit of typing. Could please place their phones on mute or press *6. Just words about Les. He's currently, in the past at least years, been focused on accreditation and quality improvement for state and local health departments. He also serves on the board of the directors for the Public Health Accreditation Board. And with that, Jack, I am going to pass it to you.
Okay.
On.
Okay, just hold on for 1 second. I think I might be able to get in.
Oh, great.
Hold on. Try another computer. I heard, but it disappeared.
Are you on?
Some of it. Hold on. I don't see the slides. That's some of them.
An icon on the bottom of your screen with a white and blue box.
Or at the top that says the PDCA cycle.
Yeah, I get anything. We won. Is not our friend today.
Right. We're at implementing the PDCA cycle for change leaders, understanding your leadership style.
Yep. So whenever you start change, an organization embarks on change, one of the things that you run across immediately is resistance. He constantly wants to know, why are we changing, what's the purpose for this, and what am I going to lose in this process? And One of the things as we started developing this lesson over the year or so ago was if you looked at the book, The Flight of the Buffalo in 1994, it sums up what a change leader does. A change leader has a constant struggle to overcome change because it's hard because people overestimate the value of what they have and underestimate the value of what they might be giving up. And, you constantly bump into this all the way through it. So as we started looking at change on that first slide, which talks about the PDCA cycle, we talked about really as a change leader, both Les and I have run organizations where we have gone and made major changes. They may not have been very popular, but then, worked out very well for the organizations. The things we spent some time thinking about was, how did we do it? We looked at the PDCA cycle. We talked about thinking, acting, and caring in the process. And as we went along a little bit further on this, some joined us, and we talked about, here's the people we bump into along the way, resistors, and we'll talk about them. And the other thing on that slide, you'll see there's a good quote by Philip Rivers. It says, we must be the champions of change because the only other alternative is to be the victim of change. We really don't want to be the victim of change. We want to make sure that when we do it, it happens correctly. So if you could, Sonia, one more slide. And the next slide in this case is the thing from Dilbert. It says we're hiring a director of change management to help employees embrace strategic changes. And we can come up with strategies that make sense that employees would embrace the change. And as that sounds harder. And it is hard to make things that people would really embrace to make change with. And on the next side, you'll see there's a quote, change has been around for a long time. Leadership has been around for a long time.
I'm sorry. Yep. I'm not quite following which slide you're on.
You change the definition?
Oh, thanks.
Okay. In this case, as for the best leaders, don't notice their existence. And that's the type of change leader you want to be. The next best, the people honor and praise. The next they fear, and the next they hate. You don't want to be the last one. Really a good change leader. When work is done, we'll say we did it ourselves. It'll be non-existent. And that's really the best type of leader you have. You'll see on the next slide about, in this case, about change leader. It's not a position. It's an action. It's something that you have to do. There's no job description that says change leader. If people see things that are working well, and they take action to make the change. I've seen many times in organizations that I've run, the last one was a major hospital, somebody would just get fed up on a nursing floor and say, this isn't working, and make the leadership and make the change to make the organization better. And permission to do it, but overall it's somebody taking action. And if you go to the next slide, we'll see a Dilbert cartoon again. And he talks about, he says, I'm moving to a shared leadership model. You will take on one piece of the leadership role. And what's my piece? Well, something we call blame. And not something we want to know in this organization is to make blame. Really when we make changes, as it says in the quote at the bottom, is one that knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And that's what we're really talking about with PDCA. If you look at the next slide, you'll see what are some of the challenges of instituting change, personal or organizational. These are some of the key ones that we want to talk about. I'm missing here.
Jack.
We have the slides, is that we have the polling question. Not that because I can't see them.
Let's go ahead and do the poll.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. I'm going to, everybody, you may see it now, but you should see it now. Just look to the right-hand side of your panel. We're getting votes. Jack.
Totally here. Yeah.
Jack, slides that I just sent, it seems like, okay.
I'm able to see what's up there. I was on the wrong thing.
I am going to review answers in about 10 seconds. We got a good number of responses here. Okay, it looks like which style do you use most? And the most people said was definitely coaching. And then let's see, with about 80%. And next was visionary with about 12%, democratic with 11%, and affiliative with 5%. And then pace setting, just about 2%. And we didn't get any in commanding.
Well, what you'll find is with the coaching leadership style and all of these styles, depending on how you're making change, you're going to have to use all of them. The one you feel most comfortable with, and you said in this case, Lila, was coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And, to go use in an organization, but sometimes you have to be a visionary leader and bring people along. Sometimes you have to be coaching. Sometimes you can be democratic and have some voting. And sometimes you just have to tell people you have to make a change. I don't know if any of you saw the Wall Street Journal last week, but the new of IBM told everybody they got to pick up the pace and make changes much faster. So you have to be commanding some time in the process. So go to the next slide. About the PDCA cycle for change leaders. Go ahead, Lil. And I talked about this slide. This is the one, the best leaders. And when we talk about leading change, requires leaders who, and if you can speak and think and plan your act cycle. And again, as we go through this process, one of the things we'll find is that as we think in the process, it's really some of the things we have to make change with. How do we speak to the organization? How to act in the organization? And then how do we help people in the organization do better? And something about chosen thought. And these are some of the things you can think when you're doing chosen thought. Click on it, Lil. One of the things is behavior. And behavior is what is it that I want in the organization? What would the organization look like? You have to think about how are you going to model that new behavior. You got to talk about your customers. You have to talk about the process. And you have to talk about data. But do I have all the information I need? Do what the real problem is in this case? And go, and then you think about improvement. What am I going to improve? And really sometimes as you're thinking, you want to think about what would this look like if they were perfect. And that's vision to have to push people along and also to help motivate them. So how do people motivate in the organization as you go forward? And the thing I always thought of was, how do I provide light, and light to people and heat. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on people not to make the change, but to move ahead, see the reason why we should be making the change in this case. You go ahead. And then I talk about speech. And one thing about speech when you do it is you take, between thinking and speaking, take the 10-second rule. Once it comes out, you can't put it back in. And really, when you're talking to people, you want to make sure you're conveying the behavior that you want. Talk about processes, not people. Set tone at any level in the organization. Encourage questions. Critical processes in the organization. And understand why and how they're not working, but understand how the customers perceive them also. The next one. Again, customer satisfaction results. What is our customers happy about? What are they unhappy about? When you talk to process owners, talk about your concerns. Talk about terms of data. Talk about things about teams. How can we make change in this place and make improvements? Talk about the change you want and how is it going to happen, and invite people to give you unfiltered feedback. And they really think about this new change that we're going to talk about, and we're going to start to be moving upon and what the data do we need to do that. And when you're doing this with people, I always like Dilbert because, he always comes up with these cartoons, and we've all seen this, where your boss comes in and says, I'm going to boost your morale. I'm going to really pretend to be interested in you as a human being. And this was back a few, months ago. Unemployment's around 9%. You're not likely to quit. It's really not sincere, but when you want to really deal with people and speaking to them about change, you have to be very sincere and very realistic about the change that's going to happen. I learned a long time ago, any organization, if you tolerate it, it's culture. If you're in charge and you're running an organization, tolerate the way it is today, it will change. It's the culture. It'll embed itself. If you don't tolerate it and you demand change, things will change over time. Go ahead. Albright always used to say, faced with the choice between changing one's mind and there's no need to do so, everyone gets busy on the proof. And we spend a lot of time trying to figure out why we shouldn't change in this process. Go ahead. With PDCA cycle, you got to act the way you want others to act. You tell people this is the way to do it, and then you do it totally differently. If you can use QI tools, use them any chance you can get. Spawn teams, lead teams, be on teams, be a team member. Learn the whole process. All the roles, because that will understand how other people are feeling in the organization, change, and how this really works. You've got processes, and every manager does, get your data, display what's happening on them. And one is to always listen to the answers to your questions. When you ask questions, listen to what people are saying. Check their tone of voice. Where we're coming from with these questions. Again, the thing is always recognize and reward those who are doing it right. And when you're reviewing teams, conduct reviews that are educational, everybody in the organization, so they can learn from teams that are doing it well, and support the teams also in this process. Go ahead. The next one you want to talk about is care. And go ahead, Lil. The thing about care is, you got to help those that are doing well to do better. Those that aren't doing well, help them to get back on track. Those having difficulty with the change, try to help them. Keep the focus on the customer at all times. And try to find those areas that are doing well and accelerate the change in those areas. Go ahead. Excellent. So talk about it, you really think about your chosen thought. Focus on the customer's process data, what it's like if it was perfect, conscious, set the tone, this action, you set the tone, now act out that tone in this case, and constant care, nurture all parts of the organization. Those that are doing well, help them to do better. Those that aren't, get back on track in the process. So through this, go ahead, just keep clicking. That PDCA cycle again. But one other thing you'll find as we do this part of the process, as you're doing this, keep going. What you'll find is that every part of the stage, between think and speak, and listen to what the audience is saying to you. Between speak and act, observe, listen. Between and check, care in this case, observe and listen. And then after you really analyze the organization, is to start thinking again. What's changed? What's the next level? How am I going to move people forward? Observing and listening of how people are reacting to the current change and the next level change that you want to go with is very important. So you can always keep modifying your message, but make it consistent and clear to everybody in the organization. Go ahead. So these are the things. I won't go through all of these because of the time, but think about observe and listening during think and speak. Helping the change, learn who your allies are right away, energize them. Sonia talked about resistors. Who are the excited? What will make them change? And the thing is, my message is believable. The thing you might try is when you're making a message or change, I found one thing that's always been useful, is call your answering machine and deliver the message to yourself and listen to it. Do you believe it? Does it sound like you believe it? Are you conveying it the way that people make sure that you believe it? Just in the feeling in the room. And what resistance is being raised? There you go, the next one. And speak and act. How is it received? What's changed? What didn't change? What resistance is being raised? What help do I need to provide? And how do I get this moving faster again? Act and care. Again, what's changed? What hasn't changed? And what area do I really need to focus on? Am I seeing consistent things that are blocking change? And how are people making the change? What's working for them? And help others do that well. And maybe acknowledge those making the change. Nothing better than a reward or acknowledgement for people doing it right. Go ahead. And they care. Again, what's not changed? We really want to understand in this case, was it not changed? Think, what are you doing wrong? Moving forward. And what's missing from my message and how I improve it? And the next start of the change of the PDCA cycle. So you'll find as you do change, it's constantly going back and refining the message and make sure that people understand it. Go ahead, Lil. I'll turn it over to Sonia for change resistors.
I remind folks that you are most welcome and invited to post questions in the chat box in the lower right-hand corner, and Lil will collect them for us and let us know about them. I get to talk about the fun part of this presentation, for me at least, is talking about who the change resistors are and people who would like to block change initiatives. I had the good fortune getting to brainstorm some ideas with Jack and Les about these very ideas. In the book, The Practice of Adaptive Leadership by Heifetz and Grasho and Linsky, they talk about how important it is when you're leading to listen to the song beneath the words. The idea that there's something happening besides what people are saying, the song beneath the words. And I think that song beneath the words is sometimes just an irritating melody that I can't remember the words to. And what I like about these change resistor archetypes that we've come up with is it helps put a name on something, and when you can name it, you can address it. And change resistors can be difficult. So we're going to provide 7 archetypes of the kinds of change resistors. Some kind of change resistor is a retired on duty. People who have managed to cleverly craft a position with a great title but doesn't have very many responsibilities. And the story they're telling themselves is, even if I do a great job, I will only get a 1 to 2% raise, so it's really not worth the effort. And the con here is that managers have accepted this limited expectation for them. And so being able to recognize that this is kind of resistor, perhaps the leader can then help overcome that fact that they have accepted a limited expectation from that retired on duty. And perhaps you have worked with this person. Perhaps you have been this person on a particular day. And these are not these are not lifetime labels for folks, but these are definitely resistors that we want to engage and help them think differently about that role. Another type of change resistor is the cheerleader, who is telling a great story to themselves. Their perspective is, I'm all for it if that's what you want to do, but I'm not really going to own that in any kind of a meaningful way. And this passive-aggressive thinking about, it sounds like a great idea, but I'm not going to really do any work, present itself in project team meetings where they ask lots of questions to appear genuinely interested in, but they're really just doing the process. And being able to acknowledge when that's happening and help cause and pause the cheerleader and bring them back to genuine support for the team is a good thing to do. A change resistor is the cave dweller. These are the corporate citizens against virtually everything. They've never met a good idea. Their perspective is, if I don't attend any meetings and I stay away from the gathering places, I can stay below the radar. No one will expect anything of me. So by this parallel universe and not intersecting with the life of the organization, no one expects anything of them. And we want to be able to engage all of the people on the team and not allow them to just disengage and think, well, this kind of work, I won't have to engage in quality improvement, or I won't have to engage in whatever the organizational goals are if I just kind of stay in my corner behind my boxes. change resistor is the voluntold. At least all of us have had an opportunity to be the voluntold person. You know, you're going to represent us at this meeting, or you're going to go attend this training. But there's some folks who take that to heart a little too long and arrive at the meeting clueless, and their greatest enthusiasm is for the snacks. Their perspective is, I may have to fight the Stockholm syndrome and realize that I've been taken hostage and I didn't align with my captors. The cause here is that we want to engage people in a shared vision so that they own that purpose and will be engaged with the process. Another change resistor is a short horizon. People who are counting the days to retirement, sometimes they're counting the days to retirement more than a year out. And their perspective is, oh, I'm not going to bother with this because I can just coast right on out the door. And this kind of an attitude can really have a negative impact on the whole team's progress, because these folks have a position of authority and can negatively influence everyone's thinking. It doesn't take much negative energy to really cause harm to a team, and you would hope that folks are committed to the process all the way through.
Shortly, please.
Historians, I see myself as a historian for my agency. I like to think I have a lot of institutional memory about what's been happening. But this is kind of historian that takes a negative spin and says, we already tried that. And we know it doesn't work, so we're not trying that. It can poison the change process and innovative efforts if we've already tried that is always the response to opportunities for change and improvement. One of my favorite archetypes, this is Teflon person. No task sticks to this. You're brainstorming tasks in a group, and this person manages to never volunteer for anything. And their silence is golden and don't have to own the work. But the question there is that the roles and responsibilities need to be clear to assure everyone has shared ownership in the tasks, not just the talkers of the group, but those who choose to be quiet. They don't mean to be Teflon, and they don't want to resist every project, but they need to have an opportunity to get sticky with the process. It's not enough to just recognize that there are these resistors, although it's nice and fun to think about these different kinds of archetypes, and maybe you can think about people you've known in your past or present who exhibit these kinds of behaviors. But it's nice to think about some tips on how we might get past change resistance, because all quality improvement work does involve some change for some folks. So people resist change. They resist being changed, according to Peter Senge. And we're making 5 strategies for overcoming resistors. First is also from Heifetz and Linsky, Leadership on the Line, Staying Alive Through the Dangers of Leading. And they talk about the importance of speaking to loss. They don't resist change so much, but they resist loss. So what is it that a person is going to lose if they adopt the change that the improvement process is suggesting? Maybe they have a lot of control, and this is going to cause them to share control with others, and therefore they see a perceived loss. Is a second strategy for getting them to overcome the resistance is to get them on the bus. In Good to Great, Jim Collins talks a lot about getting people on the bus and getting them in the right seat, so making sure that they have the right role on the team. So you want to get them on the bus. The third one is from Kouzes and Posner, and that is that you got to get skin in the game or make them stockholders and stakeholders in the process. A fourth process is to use humor. We don't laugh nearly as much as we should in our work settings sometimes, so using humor can help people get past the resistance and warm up to the process. And then, of course, celebrate success. We need lots of celebration to appreciate and enjoy the good work. When the improvement has been made, there needs to be an opportunity to pause and celebrate and talk about that good work. So, Joe, would you like to take the PDCA for change leaders back, that last couple slides?
Sure. One of the things we've come up with recently is that I was doing this a couple of weeks ago in an organization, and one of the things that people mentioned was there's another type of we run into, and call them the corporate zombies. You know, people that can go to meetings for hours and just sit there and never participate. And that's sort of, sometimes a large group of the people that you run into. And you've got to get them on the bus, as Sonia was mentioning. So we get those that are early adopters, we get those that are maybe just sitting in the middle, thinking, seeing what's happening, and then the outright resistors to the process. So one of the things you have to do as a change leader is really be a consensus builder. And you have to go out and find those pioneers that are willing to go forward with you and make the change. And big part of it is to communicate a compelling vision. And what I've always learned, I learned it a long time ago, was have an elevator speech. Something that is very short. There's a model that you can talk about, 27-9-3, 27 words, 9 seconds, 3 points. And that's what you want to get across. And you have to be consistent with that as you're going through it. And again, you have to be realistic in describing to people what are the challenges that we have ahead of us, what's the consequences if we don't do it, consequences if we do it. And we sure people understand that, in any change situation, things will change. You will lose something and you will gain something. And hopefully what happens is gain more than we lose as an organization. Everybody comes out feeling at the end that they pretty whole from where they started from in the process. So if you can do the next slide. Okay. So one of the ingredients for change, the first thing is really start by building the case for change. And that's something you have to do, gradually. You have to have data. You have people understand why are we making the change. Then a consistent message, and keep it consistent. Don't change it every time you talk about it. Keep it consistent for a period of time. And underestimate the amount of time and effort this will take. And one of the key things as you do this is when you're talking about the change, it takes a lot of personal effort to do it. And every time you have an interaction with somebody or a group organization, use an opportunity to engage them in the change process. And again, I talked about in the PDCA cycle, you talk about observe and listen. Observe how people are reacting to the change. Is it hostile? Is it passive? Is it aggressive about it? Are they interested in it? Those are things you want to observe. And listen to how they speak about it. What are the questions they're asking? Points they're raising that you overcome? What things that they feel will derail the change? And a big thing all the time is, why are we doing it now? And that's why you need to have data and you need to have a consistent message. So if you go next one. So have any questions? Did Sonia answer?
Welcome, Sonia. Thank you so much. This is Lil again with NNPHI. I really appreciate this presentation. I know that it gives me some really great ideas and concrete specifics of how I can be a change leader to improve our webinar platform. So thank you. At that, I want to open it up to anybody else on the call. If you could type in your questions, either of the two, or I'll take a chance if you'd like to ask them verbally. We'll go ahead and try to do that. If you would just press *6.
I just think that I'd like to reiterate the slide that Jack was talking about. If you tolerate it, it's culture. Have teams that allow change resistors who don't own the work or behave as voluntold or act as the historian or the short horizon and really derail the process. And it's so important to help them get past that, to use those listen and observe skills and to bring full ownership of the opportunity to see the improvement and to be able to not overestimate what they might be losing and consider what they might be gaining in the process.
Sonia, I had a question for you too. Any recommendations for how to prevent change leader burnout? Good one.
One of the things I've always found that you can't out. and especially if the organization isn't responding to your message. One of the key things as a change leader is that it takes a lot of personal perseverance and a lot of personal effort to start to make change. And when you do it, you have to have a high tolerance for failure at the beginning. You might to 100 people and 5 might change. The more you keep speaking, the more you keep the message consistent, and the more you keep pushing forward, the more people that will join the process as you go forward. And one thing about a change leader is I've always tried to take it in pieces. You have to pick the piece where you know you can win, get that changed, and then pick the next piece you know you can win, get that changed, and then just keep moving forward. You always got to keep telling yourself every day, change has to happen, or, the consequences of not making the change. So it's a thing that can happen very easily to people to burn out, but you got to have a high tolerance for beginning, but you'll see the success later as you keep the consistency going forward.
Yeah, that's a great question. I agree that you've got to be able to have a high tolerance for failure. And also, I would encourage a change leader to really work to develop and mentor a couple of allies who share that desire for change, people who can be peer thought leaders, and then give back the work at every opportunity. When others could be leading the change, help coach them to do that so that it's not all on the one change leader, so that there are a team of change leaders to the extent possible that you can engage, even if it's not within your organization, perhaps it's a community partner, but just to really get work, be the change leader to as many as possible, so it doesn't always come back to the same person who's the only change leader.
This 5 questions just popped in. This one is closely related to the last. Can anyone in an organization be a change leader, or is it more advantageous to have senior managers as the change leaders?
Well, anybody in the organization can be a change leader. That change leader at your level in the organization. If you're going to do a transformational change of the organization, it's always good to have the senior leadership on board, because otherwise, you're just pushing a big rock uphill. You need support, and you need some, political coverage as you're moving forward to make change. It's within your own area. It could be at any level, but if you're going to make a change in the total organization, then you need to make sure that you have the senior leadership on board.
Agree that anyone in an organization can be a change leader. It's not a position of authority to create change, unless it's, systematic policy or something for the department. But we have a lot of change leaders in the organizations that I've worked in who just that change. We've got a team of folks around at my agency who are doing standing workstations, and there was no authority that created that. They just decided it would be a good idea, and they're creating a whole change, and there are 5 or 10 workstations that are set up that way.
Do you have any recommendations for dealing with change resistors who are in a leadership position but who never lead or even talk in meetings, but they're expressed concerns to individuals or in smaller groups?
One of the things we try to do is when we develop the elevator speech about change leadership, especially with the senior leaders, is ensure everybody is on board. That's a key part of it, is if they are on board at the meeting and then they go out and somebody says to them, "Oh, I hear changing in the organization," they roll their eyes and say, "Don't worry about it, it'll never come about." They undermine the whole process. In the senior leadership group, there need to be consistency and coherence across the organization. And you talked about about getting them on the bus. At some point in any organization, I know ones that I have led, you have to put them under the bus sometimes and move on without them, because some people will just not make the change, will not support it. Such, as an organization, if you're going to make the change, you just can't tolerate that level of resistance coming at the top level.
Similar, how do you engage a superior who does not assign as much importance to performance improvement or QI as the change leader? Sure. How might you engage a superior who doesn't as much importance to the performance improvement or quality improvement work as much as the change leader does.
That's why it's really important for agencies to have a strong performance improvement and quality improvement plan that sets direction and the tone for the whole agency to be clear about the collective shared purpose and the shared understanding of what is expected for performance improvement and quality improvement. And then differences of opinion, you have a plan to come back to reinforce the purpose and the desire for change.
Great. A lot of questions coming in too, and I just wanted to know that people have been asking if the presentation slides are available, and yes, they are available. If you look into the chat box on the right-hand side panel, you should see the link to both the paper from Jack and then the presentation slides for today, and it was also in the email.
And Lynn, I will send you the paper lesson I wrote. I don't know if we did that on change leadership.
Yeah.
One thing I should mention is that in a upcoming issue of the Journal of Public Health Management and Practice, the change resistors that Sonia discussed, Les, I, and her wrote a paper that's going to be published in there. It's coming out very shortly.
That's wonderful. Okay, get out a few more questions. In organizations with rapid turnover, how do you promote or cultivate lasting change?
So there would be a number of ways to do that. At least one of those ways would be that they have a process for new employee orientation where we describe the quality improvement process and the expectation for all staff to be seeking ways to improve the strategies and the processes of the organization. So you can set that in your welcome to new employees that this is the culture, the expectation, the quality culture of the organization where you're constantly looking for improvement.
That's very true, Sonia. One thing, when I was running a hospital, one of the things I did every first Monday of the month was I did the new employee orientation. I used to describe our values, our vision, our culture, and so forth. It would take about 25 minutes to do that, and that's the people who were there, and say, if anybody cannot support this, it's a good time to leave the organization. And only once in 10 years, 120 sessions, did a person get up and walk out. But I think it's a good time to really set the tone and the expectations right in the orientation. And that way, when you have new people coming in, they're not listening to the historians in your organization. They hear firsthand from somebody in the organization saying, this is our culture and this is the way we do things here. And that's a real important impact on them as they're moving forward in their career.
Wonderful. Jack, will you repeat what you said about the 2793
rule?
If
you go up on Google, you can Google in 2793. It's developed by some Vermont leaders. And what we had was any good elevator speech has 27 words, 9 seconds, and it has 3 major points.
Another, after a change has been made, the drift that occurs if there is not consistent follow-up can also derail efforts. Do you have any suggestions?
Make changes to review it on a regular basis. And I think sometimes what organizations lose sight of is the fact that we put change in and everybody, sits down in the easy chair and says, oh, we can take it easy now. Well, realize that when you get change done, you're just setting the organization up for exchange and getting people ready. So what you need to do is make sure as you're making change is to have measurable goals and objectives in there. And monitor those on a regular basis to make sure it's sticking, because what people see is if all of a sudden you're not around, push change, well, maybe that's off our radar screen right now. Something else came up and we'll go do that for a while. So you need to keep measuring it, monitoring it, and reinforcing it.
Yeah, the PDCA model was illustrated for or that leading change requires leaders who think, speak, act, care, and continue to think, speak, act, and care. It all connects. It's a continuous process, so you don't get to stop. There has to be an opportunity to revisit all change and consider whether or not that's still the appropriate change.
I have time for about one more question, and it is, how do you help people who think that they know and / or are doing performance management and QI? Thinking this is out, who think they know but they might not know. The traditional tools.
Question. I don't like this. Most of us come to work every day trying to do our absolute best, that we're improving our processes all the time. I'd ever come to work and thought I'd like to do it worse today than I did it yesterday. And but to do performance improvement or quality improvement is adopting a formal set of tools and processes. And unless we're documenting it in a formal way, we're not truly doing quality improvement. And we want to use those tools so that we can demonstrate the work, and because there was a lot of effort to develop those tools to provide us the best practice for development. So again, a plan and an expectation in the agency that you're going to use a particular set of tools is one strong strategy for assuring that people are on board. Jack?
Yeah, you're right, Sonia. I think, having a consistent plan, a consistent problem-solving process that people follow and trained in is a way to make sure everybody has the same level of calibration with their, ability to do things.
And with that, I need to close and let you all go, but just fill out the evaluation that's pulled up on your screen. And this webinar will be available in a couple weeks, including presentation slides, the archived recording, and the that Jack mentioned that is in the chat box, the 2-pager. And that I want to give a great thanks to Sonia, Jack, and Les for sharing this. It's been a great learning experience for me. And the remaining questions we will with Jack and Sonia to see if we could get those included in the transcribed questions that will be in the webinar summary. And that announcement will be sent to you. If you receive the announcement for this one, you'll receive that one. Thank you all so much.